Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue not only my Vincent Price marathon, but the Corman Poe cycle as well. And although I'm skipping the third film for now, The Premature Burial, because it's the only one in the cycle that does not feature Vincent Price. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but I will be going back to that at the end of the cycle. I'm actually skipping ahead to the next to last film in the cycle, which came out in 1964. That is The Masque of the Red Death, which I don't know how well you can see that, but making up his face and hair is actually bodies. I always thought that was a great cover. And this is part of the 2-pack with The Premature Burial. And Masque of the Red Death is considered by many to be the best, even more so than Pit the Pendulum, film based on Edgar Allan Poe story and Roger Corman film. And I will say I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. Some things I did like more than Pit the Pendulum. For example, I would probably say Vincent Price's performance, which as far as his performance goes, this is him at his most dastardly, sadistic, vile, evil. I mean, he is just a wretched bastard in this film. Nose is all runny tonight. I was just fine 10 minutes ago. But it's Vincent Price, so he does it with conviction and class. This was the first film that Corman and his crew made in England, and it took 2 weeks longer than usual, even though he was known for going over schedule and over budget. Wait, no. I've heard two things. He was always right on time, no matter how complex a film got. And then I also heard he was also known for going over schedule and over budget. The corridors of the castle that were built for Jane Asher to run through as she's held captive and tries to escape, the crew built corridors, and the length of which all of them made up 2 miles. 2 miles of corridors. Now, Corman had said he always felt that Fall of the House of Usher and Masque of the Red Death were the 2 best Poe stories. And originally it was supposed to be the first follow-up to Usher. But he decided not to for a number of reasons. He, of all the screenplays that were presented to him, he wasn't happy with any of them. I mean, there were drafts written by John Carter, Robert Towne, Barbara Morris. Wasn't happy with any of them. And also, I mean, at this time, it was 1961. He felt it was too similar to the Ingmar Bergman film, The Seventh Seal, from 1957. So he decided not to do it. He kept pushing it back. Also, there was a number of rival adaptations being made at that time, which one of them was even supposed to have Vincent Price as well. God, I don't know what is up with my nose tonight. My allergies are so damn finicky. What's going to happen in the spring when I'm actually allergic to shit? All right. Dan Holler was the production designer, but he was not credited because I guess they really wanted this to be a British film for whatever reason. With the final masquerade sequence, Corman was dissatisfied. He thought it was the greatest flaw of the film because, sort of like why John Carpenter isn't a fan of The Fog, didn't have a lot of time to do it properly. It was done in one day, and if he had done it with Hollywood, he would have had more time, but he said that English crews tend to work too slow. The film was remade in 1989, starring Patrick Macnee and Adrian Paul, which this film has an appearance by Patrick McGee, who, even in the films that I reviewed, he was in Lucio Fulci's The Black Cat, he was in Carnival of Souls, Tales from the Crypt. He was Frank the Writer in Clockwork Orange. He's in this, playing kind of a subdued kind of role. And added in at the last minute, the subplot with the dwarf in this film actually comes from another Poe short story called Hop Frog. Hop Frog, yeah. So there's little elements of that as well. And again, I really enjoyed this movie. It's another period piece. It takes place in, I actually don't even think it really said, but it's definitely like 1700s kind of England. Which actually I'm kind of curious, when does this take place? It was written in 1842. Even the Wikipedia on the original story doesn't say anything. But anyway, it opens up with this, it's in, did I say 1700s England? It takes place in Italy. Idiot. There will be people that will point that out. They won't watch long enough to be like, no, it takes place in Italy. But it opens up with this elderly woman up on a hill collecting sticks, going down to a village. And there's a man in all red with tarot cards. And he has a white flower. He waves his hand over it and it's red. And he says, tell your village that their day of deliverance is coming. And then when she, well, blood drips on it, then the whole thing turns red. Shortly later, Prince Prospero, who in this film is depicted as a Satanist, but in the original story, I don't think he is. I think that's new for the film. He's played by Vincent Price, and like I said, this is, from the films I've seen, this is his most vile character, his most evil. Like, he is a sadistic tyrant of a prince who, you know, really uses his power just to do whatever he wants. Treats any person below him, which is everyone, no matter how up or down, like they're animals. He shows up in the village, and these two villagers approach him, saying that the day of deliverance from your tyranny will end. And he sentences them to death, but this one young woman named Francesca, played by, was it Jane Asher, begs for mercy, and the way he bargains with her is says, all right, I'll let one live, but you have to decide which one. And one is her father, one is her lover. But it's at this point they hear a scream, and first they hear a scream. Is kind of funny because he just says silence that. Wait, so I thought it was funny. Then there's another scream, and he goes and looks in this hut, and it's the woman from the opening, but she's got the red, bloody mess on her face, and it's the Red Death. So, and it's like this plague that is hit, and he's like, oh, okay, well, bring the two men, bring her back to the palace, set the place on fire. So then they get back to the palace, and we sort of see how, like, they give Francesca a bath, and he gives her a dress. He makes her take her crucifix off. And then he goes to this party where there's guests, rich guests who are guests to the palace. And he just looks at random ones, and, you know, he makes an analogy of who they are as, like, a people, or what they're acting like, to an animal. It makes him act as it. You know, like one guy he calls a pig, makes him be a pig. The next is a worm, then a woman is a jackass. He does it for his amusement. And Patrick McGee plays one of his higher-ups, one of his noblemen. And we get he's a bit of a sadist, too. Like, he finds torture and death to be entertainment. Which, in fact, there is entertainment with this young girl dancer accompanied by this dwarf. And I think she, like, accidentally kicks wine over, or his wine cup, and he slaps her in front of everyone, a young child. Which, in fact, the guy's name is Hop Toad, so. Juliana is, I believe it's Prospero's wife, or I heard someone say his consort, whatever I guess that is. She wants to be part of his satanic cult. And eventually Francesca finds him lying in this weird state in his black room. Her lover's name is Gino, and her father's name I thought was interesting. It's Ludovico, which Ludovico is the name of the technique in Clockwork Orange that cures Alex. They're forced to be trained how to fight for amusement. And of course, you know, all this talk of Satanist cults and all this, Francesca is a very devout Christian. Giuliani gives Francesca the key to her father and lover's cell. And they fight and kill 3 guards, but then they're recaptured by Prospero. And the way he talks to Francesca about like Christianity. He's like, well, see, now they've sinned. Even though it's not that he doesn't believe. He just uh, 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 I don't really want to say disregards, but he sort of rebuffs. There's even one scene where a sort of fellow prince, I think he's a fellow prince from another area, comes to the castle, and he's kind of pompous, and Prospero's just kind of like, oh, well, you want to come in? Well, too bad. And he tells him that the Red Death is around outside the castle, and he begs to come in so much that he even offers his wife to him, and he's just like, I've already had her. And he's like, please spare me the Red Death, like, out of friendship. And he just grabs a crossbow, and he's just like, for friendship, and he shoots him in the neck. Then he tosses her a dagger and says, spare yourself the Red Death. But he lets her in anyway. There's a big feast where Prospero summons Gino and Ludovico. They refuse to fight, and he has them choose daggers to cut themselves with. One is coated with poison. Ludovico attempts to stab Prospero with it, but he runs him through the heart with his own sword. He casts Gino out of the castle to be... he sends him out to catch the Red Death, which Gino runs into the cloaked figure, who's also played by Price. And he presents him with a tarot card that says he represents mankind, which we kind of get that because in the beginning of the film where he's the one that speaks up to Prospero about the Day of Deliverance, he sort of represents the lower people as sort of what's good in the world, and Prospero, obviously being the leader of a Satanist cult, is sort of all that's bad. But anyway, Juliana's put through her final initiation ceremony. She drinks out of a chalice, and she has a hallucination, which is sort of similar to like the flashback sequences in Pit and the Pendulum. Corman really got into doing these psychedelic scenes. I think he was one of the first to really do that. Juliana declares herself the wife of Satan, and she's attacked by Prospero's falcon, which Prospero then says, now she's married to Satan. And Vincent Price, just all these lines he delivers that it just... Normally it would just come off as like just cold, cold villainy. Can't talk tonight either, apparently. Just come off as just cold villainy. But he says it with such charm and class that only Vincent Price can do. Price and Cushing, I guess. Like, they have just that class and conviction that they can make the most evil things sound pretty cool. There's also this scene, like, when he's showing Francesca around. He brings her into this yellow room, and he says, my father once imprisoned a man in this room for 3 years. And then when he was let out, he couldn't bear to look at the sun or even a daffodil because of the color. And she was like, that's, she calls it barbaric. And he's like, well, it's an experiment just to see what we can do to the human mind. What kind of innocent things can we take away from it? Hoptoad talks to Alfredo, which is Patrick McGee's character. he talks Alfredo into wearing an ape suit to the huge masquerade ball that's being planned, and Prospero has told everyone not to wear red because of the Red Death. And we see their exchange before where they're talking about it. He even says there's a big stuffed animal that you can hollow out and wear. And Hop Toad was going to be his trainer. But when that finally comes, he humiliates Alfredo in front of the guests. By grabbing like the chandelier and like making it so the chandelier hoists him up, and he just covers him with brandy. Because he was mad that the dancer kicked wine over. Which Prospero rewards Hop Toad for amusing entertainment, but he had already left. And at this point, Gino comes back to rescue Francesca and encounters the cloaked figure and tells him not to enter the castle and promises that, Francesca will come out regardless. And I really like the scene of the masquerade ball like towards the end, because it's so frenetic and crazy, almost psychedelic. And eventually we do get scenes with both Prospero and the red cloaked figure sort of looking at each other. The camera's doing like a lot of spinning and crazy shit. It looks great. Prospero believes him to be the ambassador of Satan, and he has to see the figure's face and says there is no face of death until the moment of your own. And then the ball turns into this what's it called? It turns into a dance macabre, which, yes, is the name of a Stephen King book, but it's also a dance of death. Sort of similar to the Masque of the Red Death in Phantom of the Opera. Prospero asks for Francesca to be spared, and given the high status in Hellas he believes he deserves. And the figure seems to agree, but sends Francesca outside. It's because he knows Gino's out there. But Francesca sadly kisses Prospero for some reason. I'm guessing for sparing her. And then the figure reveals that he's not Satan, and that, since he's not, Prospero's Satanist beliefs will not save him from what's going to happen. Each man creates his own god and devil for himself. And when Prospero rips his hood back, it shows that it is Prospero's own red face, soaked in blood, and that he's the embodiment of the Red Death himself, which is Prospero's own hell. So now the whole crowd is now infected. Everyone's, red and bloody. And so we see Prospero trying to flee, and this is when the camera's getting all frenetic and crazy. We see Prospero trying to flee. We see everyone dancing, and you know, very eccentric, high energy scene that's very bloody. Looks it's a highlight of the film, and it's a shame that Corman's not pleased with it because I thought it looked great. Prospero's cornered in his black room and is asked, "Why should you be afraid to die? Your soul has been dead for a long time," and kills him. Then at the very end, Red Death himself is seen playing with his tarot cards with a girl who escaped the village when the homes were burnt and everyone was killed. And then we see other cloaked figures of all different colors. They're all talking about their tasks and why they're there, and Red Death says, he says something about of peasant and prince, the worthy and the dishonored, and he gives a little speech. And among the, it says there are only 6 people left, which is Francesca, Gino, Hop-Toad Esmeralda, the girl that he just played tarot cards with, and an old man in a nearby village. And we see all of them walking together, and then we get, like, in Old English, we get, he says, what was it? Sic transit gloria mundi, which is Latin for thus passes the glory of the world. And then when they walk off screen, we see a caption of Poe's words, "And darkness and decay and the Red Death held a limited dominion over all." And it wasn't quite as... It was well received when it first came out. Not great, but, favorable. Now it's considered one of the best Poe films. It's considered one of Corman's best films. One of the best of the 60s, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I love seeing Price as both the hero and the villain in films. In this film, he's kind of both. 2 different characters, but, as Prospero, I really liked him as just that evil fuck. Price did a great job with it. I love the masquerade ball at the end, especially when everyone's all infected. It does have this sense of kind of, you do get the sense of just a debauchery, just like things were humble in the village, and then in the palace it's just terrible people doing sinful, wrong things. But yeah, I thought this was a great film. I really liked The Masque of the Red Death. I liked it more than Usher. It's up there with Pit and the Pendulum. I probably still say I like that one the best, even though this one's very close. I mean, I'd probably have to think about it between the two, but yeah, fucking fantastic movie, Masque of the Red Death. So yeah, I will get to the premature burial at the end of this cycle. I just wanted to get through the Price ones first. And this one sounds interesting as hell. A guy buried alive, even though he had everything he needed to escape such scenario. But yeah, Mask of the Red Death, I really enjoyed it. Can't believe it took me a half hour. Probably 'cause I went into every detail of the film. But anyway, awesome movie. Highly recommend it. Thanks for watching.